Welcome to another edition of the Heron Outlet. She is Alex Winley. I am Ian Hest. And what a big week last week was for Inter Miami, defeating the reigning MLS Cup champions, New York City FC, 3-2 in spectacular fashion. The roof blowing off Drive Pink Stadium. In another instance, the fifth game in a row at home where Inter Miami has scored a goal in the 80th minute or later. Alex, let's start there. That man that did it, Ray Hudson called him Dracula when he scored it, as we love Ray and all of his quips there. He was named MLS Player of the Week, got a brace, his first goals for Inter Miami, really looking to be the difference maker that they intended when they went out and got him as a designated player. Really making the rest of the league look foolish with only getting him for $150,000 in general allocation money. I first off, I'm a bit surprised that it's worked so well so fast. Normally it takes a little bit longer to adjust to situations like this. So let's start there with what do you think is just this magic formula for him to be able to slot in? Let's remember, he started his first game 3 days after his first training. So this is really remarkable. He's been here a little over a month now, maybe a month, like right on a month. And just the absolute difference is outstanding.
Yeah, and you see Miami really needed a player like him, talking to Neville, talking to some of the players, even they recognize his quality and um the quality he brings on the field, and not only just on the field, off the field too. We talked to Bryce Duke after one of the games, and he talked about how Pozuelo kind of took him under his wing and started to show him, how to be a professional, how to get better as a player. So his impact has sort of spread throughout the team, and even something that's interesting that Phil Neville said is that after the game he said that Pozuelo was essentially playing for a contract. I mean, we'll touch on this later as the pod goes on, but I find it interesting that Pozuelo wants to stay here. Him as a player, he wants to stay here. He wants to come back for next season. The fact that Neville said he's playing for a contract shows that there is probability that he will be back next season. So um, yeah, I think getting a player like him is just the entire deal how it went about. Just getting him for peanuts essentially, and now he's having this big of an impact. And they're going to go again this weekend after against Toronto. So yeah, you saw his influence in the New York City game as well. He had 72 touches. You're looking at his heat map now. He was pretty much all over the field. Didn't stick to really one position. He was really on the right hand side, but he floated over to the left, and he was just that free roaming player that Miami really needed. So yeah, his presence has been needed and felt on for Inter Miami, and um, yeah, it's just been really interesting to see his integration into the team.
Let's talk about formationally where he mixes and matches, which I think is very important when we're having this discussion, because sometimes he's drifted out to the left-hand side, gotten a little lost. That's where we've found that he doesn't get as many touches. It's really when he's that central attacking midfielder, almost like a traditional second striker, if you think about it, like right underneath Gonzalo, in that middle of between the midfield and him as a striker. It one almost forces Gonzalo not to be able to drop back, which has been something that we've been talking about as to our ire for a while now. Is every single
Yeah.
time Gonzalo doesn't trust his teammates, he's coming all the way back to get the ball, and then it takes so much more. He doesn't have that speed anymore to be able to get past them. So having Pozuelo there almost prohibits Gonzalo from coming back. And Gonzalo does trust him a lot more, which I think, yeah, I want to get into that, but let's just stick with formationally where he aligns there, having to be in the middle. I think that we've sort of settled on that instead of the he can roam wherever that it was. Austin's not here this week, but we had an interesting conversation during the NYCFC game, and I wish he was here to talk about it because he had likened him to Pizarro, but better. Is how Austin was trying to put it. And I ribbed him a little for that.
Yeah.
And he'll get his comeback when he talks about it, I'm sure, after hearing this. But he was getting on him as sort of not being able to get in the mix in the final pass, in that final third. And it was ironic that that was right when he goes out and scores 2 goals. And we were sort of saying, oh, we rib on him every week, and he'll score 2 every week. But I see what he's saying in terms of needing to find that right space. If he finds that right space, it's brilliant. And Phil's job is to make sure that he keeps him there. Because at times when we've seen it move, that's if there was one criticism, I think I would agree with that. But it's nice to see that there is a product that does work and that benefits other players, primarily Gonzalo, around him.
Yeah, and I think with Pizarro, I was talking about this with a friend yesterday actually, and we were saying that with Pizarro, he pretty much wanted to be that second striker, sort of play off the central, play off the main striker as a second striker, and not necessarily as a 10. So it didn't really work out between him and Gonzalo because they were occupying the same half spaces in between the defenders. So because of that, Gonzalo was forced to drop back and get the ball most of the time because Pizarro wasn't giving it to him. And some of the best games Gonzalo had was with his brother Federico Higuain, who's now coaching with the Inter Miami youth setup. Some of the best games that Gonzalo had were with his brother Federico, who was a more natural 10. So, you know, the proof is there. Like, there was a reason why Pizarro and Higuain didn't get along because they're just different but similar players, and just in the fact that they took up the same spaces. So with Pozuelo, he said it straight off the back. He does like to create. He does like to give, get assists. So, it was only natural that Higuain and Alejandro find that partnership that's probably been one of the better ones in the latter half of the year. Higuain's been super informed, and it's because of Pozuelo, really coming in and stamping that mark as that number 10, that creative player that can slip in balls in behind for Higuain. So yeah, it's been really interesting to see, and that New York City FC game was probably one of the better examples of that. Especially we're going to touch on later Alfredo Morales and that back pass. Would if Pizarro was on the field, would he have pounced that quickly or had the thoughts to score? I mean, of course, obviously anyone in that position would have, but just the fact that Pozuelo was really just he was aware of the situation, and it was a part of the time in the game where it was really like low and like not really too much going on. It was just NYCFC going through the motions, and Pozuelo was just on his toes and got to that ball first. So yeah, that it's been an interesting partnership between the two of them, and we'll see how that continues as the season comes to close.
And I think that it's worth mentioning that there was no guarantee that this necessarily was going to work.
Yeah.
To go out and get a designated player in the middle of the season, Gonzalo necessarily didn't have to like that. And I think that we can give fairness to it. He was battling with Campana. You go out, you get another designated player that was, not playing the same position, but is an attacking player. There are a lot of, for someone who has worn his emotions on his sleeve and shown us how he feels when he is not happy at times. There were a lot of components here that could have made this not work. And I think that that's worth commending all parties involved, from Henderson to Phil to Pozuelo to Higuain to the surrounding components around him, to guys like Robert Taylor, guys like Vasilov, because Taylor has had to take a little bit of a back seat because of this. Yeah. And I think that it takes a village in this, because there were a lot of ways where this wouldn't have worked, and we were curious right when the move was made because it happened so fast. If you remember. Yeah. I think the way that it happened with us was I texted you guys at like 8 o'clock in the morning, like, hey, we're going to be on the lookout for Pozuelo today. And everybody was like, what? Where did that come from? And and we were just all hands on deck from there. A little inside baseball there for you guys at home. But I'm struggling to see how a move that worked, that happened this fast, needed everybody to get on board. And there were a lot of ways where it couldn't. And I give a lot of credit to Phil there, because for Pozuelo, to fit into the team so well, But for B, him to be praising this locker room as much as he was. Now, we know all of the saga, the drama that he had in his departure from Toronto. He was very unhappy with Toronto, hated the locker room, I think is a fair word to say. I think he even said it in an interview um, uh, before he left. So I don't think that it's worth passing over that he was very unhappy there. Now, oftentimes you can go into a new situation and think, oh, well, everything is rosy pink and wonderful. But he has had absolute praise, called the best locker room he's ever played in. For a team that has had the amount of trauma that Inter Miami has had in its short history, to be able to develop a culture of now exciting football and joy and passion and smiles in that joy. You watch the video that the team did with the little boy Tiago that past week, which was so adorable, and to see the hinchadas and all that they're doing, and just the feel around this club feels differently. It feels like everybody's buying in and finally kind of riding this same wave. And I think that this partnership with Pozuelo and with Higuain has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I agree. I was mentioning that. I don't know. I forgot where it was. Maybe it was in our private group chat. But I think just this club. I think it's finally starting to find their foundation and their ethos and what they want to be in the league. And in 2020, we thought it was going to be something different, but and now as you see it grow into they're going into their fourth year, which is pretty 4 years is quite some time. And it's been a lot of ups and downs, but heading into their fourth year, it seems like they finally have found something to call themselves Inter Miami football club. Essentially, they have the you talk about the grounding with Yedlin and Drake Callender, and then now the team has joined in it, where grounding is basically where they walk around barefoot after practice just to just realign their selves and try to relax after practice session. You see the Inter Miami Foundation, Inter Miami CF Foundation that the team recently came out with about just helping around in the community and whatnot. And you see the post match traditions that the supporters are doing. When they win, they go under. Or even when they lose, regardless, whatever the result it is, the supporters go under the bleachers and chant for about in 30 or so minutes, even after it's a draw or loss or win. So you just see this team coming together, and I think bringing it back to the players, you see the players buy into it as well. Look at Pozuelo. He loves Miami. He wants to stay here. Phil said that he's fighting for a contract, so it's a good indication that he could stay for next season. Higuain has bought into it, the entire locker room, even the social media. I don't know if people saw, but even when they were on that cross, continent road trip, where they were doing charades and karaoke, and they were just being funny guys. And Indiana Vaslov is a really good actor, which is part of the course for him. His name is Indiana, and it's a famous character in the movie. So yeah, it just seems like this team is starting to come together at the right time. As togetherness, right, in time for their playoff push. And last season we probably wouldn't have seen this. We probably wouldn't have seen the results on the field, and we probably wouldn't have seen this camaraderie off the field. So it's really been a key evolution of the team as the season has gone on, and it's definitely a foundation and a launching pad to next season, and where they're able to take this beyond.
I want to play a game with you, and then I want to talk about Alfredo Morales and what happened, because I think that more than just giving up that last goal, Inter Miami did a very good job. But let's play a game real fast. We'll play percentages, okay, with Gonzalo and Pozuelo. I think that we all can agree, or both can agree, that Pizarro probably is not coming back as a designated player next year. So we can put that as a one. Pellegrini, I think, is also, we'll put that off on the side too. Okay, so let's just stick with Pozuelo and Gonzalo. Question one to Gonzalo: percentage that he returns next year. Question two on Gonzalo: percentage that he returns as a designated player. And then we'll do the same with Pozuelo.
Percentage that Gonzalo returns next season, I say like 45%. I think his form has shown his recommitment to the cause that Miami are trying to build. It's shown that he's committed. Your second question sort of relates, it relates to the first. Chances he comes back as a DP, that's tough. Honestly, it's tough. If it's a max tam deal, I think you take it, but he's turning 35 this December, and you want your DPs to get younger, especially with what Chris Henderson has brought in. He's brought in guys in their prime or just hitting their prime, or and Emerson, Bryce Dukes, and Campana's case, they're youngins that they're trying to just really kickstart their careers. You know, bringing. I don't think anyone's opposed to bringing back Gonzalo on TAM money, but right now as a DP, I think Miami, especially with the sanctions, even though they've got a lot of that money back, I think it's going to shorthand them, roster flexibility if they tie one DP spot to a 35, nearly 36-year-old. TAM deal, yes, but as a DP, I think that percentage is like 15% because I just can't see it.
No, I agree with you.
He does have
I would
a
even put it lower. I'm going to put it at 10%, and even that I think is a
yeah.
little high. Now that also, yeah, one goes hand in hand because I think that significantly reduces the chance that Gonzalo would take the cut to stay. So I'd say like 25% maybe that he stays, and that's nothing against his form. I think that both parties would have it if the number was right, and
Mm-hmm.
I also think with a designated player deal, you're probably not signing a 1 year deal. You're probably signing maybe an 18-month contract. So we're talking into getting around 37 years old. I don't see it happening as a designated player. Like you said, Max Tam again would require some flexibility on Henderson's part simply because
Yeah.
one of those years is going to be a sanction year. So
Mm-hmm.
that just all of those factors. I know fans are excited about his play lately. I know everybody is. This is the best we've seen Gonzalo in an Inter Miami jersey. I guess I still go back to this is still a business, and they didn't want to get rid of Lewis Morgan necessarily. The price was right to get rid of Lewis last year, and to make all of the changes. I think 17 in, 17 out, right? Which
Yeah.
is just extraordinary. I don't think that they plan on doing that much this year. But let's switch to
Yeah, Phil even
Pozuelo
said it.
then.
Not to cut you off, but Phil even said it. Like he that this last offseason was an anomaly. They don't want to do that every offseason. They just want to bring in two or three players each season. So that's a really good point. They don't want to continue to bring in 17 in, 17 out. That's well, first of all, you can't sustain a team like that, and second of all, it's just not good for
Right.
anyone running a team. So yeah.
All right. Well, let's switch to Pozuelo because I think those numbers will be a little higher.
Yeah, okay. For Pozuelo, yeah, I think 75% he stays. 80% he stays. I think it's really contingent on his play the rest of the season, but just based off of what he's doing now and based off of, just the way Inter Miami acquired him, the fact that he likes the team culture, he likes Miami. His kids are here. The fact that he's he's played in MLS, he knows the league, so there's no period of time where he needs to get used to that. And he's still only 30, 31, so you can sign him to a 2.5 year deal, and that's smart for Miami because he's a DP caliber player, and he still has that in him. So I'd say about 85%. The rest is really contingent on Pozuelo playing well, but I think it's super high. I think you know he's just a good player, and plus he is that player that you build a team around, and you get Pozuelo, and then if there are two more DP spots open, depending on what happens to Pizarro and Higuain, you can bring in other players that fit with him, and then Miami can really flesh out the roster. So I'd say a high 85%.
And as a DP, you'd think he would come back.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
See,
Unless like
I'm a little torn.
yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
and forgive me for being like the business guy in all of this, but
Yeah.
I would say high too. I would put it at like 90% because I think that and
Mhm.
and I'll even put like the idea that he comes back as a designated player a little higher than I would probably be comfortable with. I'll put it at like 60-65%. The only reason that I'm that
Mm.
low is that if if you're able to work all of these without making them designated players, all of a sudden you're LAFC.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're
Yeah.
LAFC,
Yeah.
right? Like and there is a pitch to be made there to these guys that like, hey, if you're willing to do this, if you're willing to be Gareth Bale, right? If you're willing to do these things, then we can build a super team in Miami. If you're happy in Miami, if this is the place you want to be, but right, like Gonzalo, you can end your career here. Your brother's here working for the club. You know, Pozuelo, you've said that you want to be here long term. Like we can make all this work, and we can be the LAFC of the East. I really think that there is
Yeah, but
a big pitch there.
I don't. Yeah, but I think I know this is
It's
gonna
never
sound
my
stupid.
place to like put money in or out of other people's pockets. Like I don't like want to be that person, but I do think that
Yeah.
like if you were able, and if anybody's able to do it, it's Chris Henderson. I think that he's proven that by now. I'm just saying like in an ideal world, you can find a way to convince these two to do it, and then the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna push back a little. Just I think from a PR standpoint, I think the optics of that after the sanctions, trying to squeak some of these guys in as non DP players will look
That's
a little
fair.
suspect. Yeah, I mean, not that it's not possible. Of course, I think you can make an argument. Pozuelo can be like a max TAM player. 3 years ago, obviously DP, but maybe now he's a little older. Maybe he doesn't have the same output that he did during his peak Toronto days. Maybe max TAM player. Higuain definitely TAM player, but the optics of this will just look
I
bad, and I'm
understand
sure
that.
Miami.
Yeah,
Yeah, Miami probably won't care, but I think, yeah, just from a culture perspective,
the
I'm
league probably
sure
wouldn't be too
they'll,
happy about
yeah,
that.
the league. Well, and then you look at LAFC, what they're doing, yeah, but which is fair. I think they have the I don't know what the mechanisms are, but I think they're probably in the clear. I think okay. Well, with Chiellini, obviously he's probably a TAM player. I think where everyone's tripped up with Bale going to LAFC after he made what over north of $30 million last season and being a TAM player. But I think there's this weird mechanism where I think next season he will have to be a DP. I think
Yeah.
if he
It'll kick
returns
in
next
on
year.
July 1st. He'll be a designated
Yeah,
player, which everybody
it's
overlooks
a
with that deal, but that's fine.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. So, but yeah, I think the optics of it for Miami will look a little bad. Not that they can't do it, but I think Henderson just doesn't want any more drama than what the
And I'm
team
not
has
saying that
had
it
the
would be
last
bad.
few
And
years.
Pozuelo's like right in that sweet spot in terms of how much a
Yeah,
designated player makes. That
yeah,
if
that's
he
the
were,
thing.
it wouldn't be as drastic as I guess just where I was thinking of it, as opposed to like others. We're talking, you know, we're talking I think a little north of 1 million that they need to convince him on, as opposed to
Yeah,
5 million that we're talking about with Gonzalo. So
yeah,
again, like if they can make it happen, I think that it will be great. But we'll see. Let's wrap
yeah,
up NYCFC with Alfredo Morales because I think that that goal that he allowed with the back pass that Pozuelo scored the winner was just the climax of an Inter Miami game plan that targeted him to complete fruition and did it in a great format for I think duplicating it this weekend against Toronto to Michael Bradley in the way
yeah,
that they allowed him the ball in those pockets and yet didn't allow him any place to go. So he was sort of stuck here trying to be in that line between the defensive third and the middle third for the whole game, sort of stuck in no man's land by himself. And so his touches wound up being lower because he was just standing on the ball. His creative passes or his ability to advance the line wasn't there because that line of Mota and Duke and Gregory was right there in his way,
yeah,
standing him in the face. And so a lot of the time he was having to look wide or back. And so he would, if you can see on that third goal, what happens? He receives it and he's immediately turning back to goal. Right? He looks wide and then turns back to goal. And it was because that repetition of making him do it so many times. And then, like you always say, look what happens when you press. Pozuelo was right
yes,
there and that was
I,
the
w-
perfect iteration of it. And I really give
but
credit to the game plan. I think he could work against Michael Bradley this week.
yeah, we should make that like a shirt, something about like the high pressing. Like genuinely, I've said it so many times. Especially in a league like MLS, you can afford to press because it's not technically the most skillful league, and of course there are certain teams that do play that way. But you can press, and 9 times out of 10, you'll end up winning the ball back. And that goal was literally the perfect chance. Morales had around 81 touches against Inter Miami, and most of them were literally in his own half. So yeah, they just kind of did a good job pinning back their two double pivot midfielders and Morales and his midfield partner. So I think yeah, it was a really solid game plan from Neville and his team. And even when the first half where that back three just wasn't it, and we were talking about that as well, how they just needed some pace over the top or a formation switch. And Phil did that mid game really, and he told McVay to slide over, and they reconfigured some things, and just before halftime they were starting to get some momentum going, and yeah, they ended up scoring in the 39th minute, but they conceded that goal, which was yeah, the extra time went over about 30 seconds, and Thiago ended up scoring. But after that, Miami went to a flat back four, and they really got it going. They brought in Ariel Lassiter. They brought in a handful of players: Indiana Vassilev, Ryan Taylor, Lassiter, and they switched up the formation. And yeah, it just played a lot better, and you got some pace up top with Ariel, and they got that second goal, and NYCFC, they just it was they outplayed Miami, but Miami, they're just one of those teams that never say die at this point, and I think if they get into the playoffs, it can be like a trap game for some of these top teams because Miami are they're difficult to play, and if these top teams aren't careful, I think it could definitely be a trap game for some of them in regards to Miami are going to play them hard, and they're going to not let them have any easy goals or anything. So yeah, I think it's just a testament to see how this team has evolved over the season. Neville's tactics. He's still a young coach, and we've been critical of him when it comes to certain things, but I think he's finding his own as a tactician a little, and he's starting to get a feel for things, and he's just been learning throughout the season as well. So
And he even said post game, we'll wrap up with this, that he even said post game that this team loves the fluidity of the formations. They revel in the fact that they can change formations at will, and whether it's three at the back, four at the back, five with a 3-5-2 or a 4-3-3, they really, or a 4-2-3-1, they really enjoy the fact that they can mix and match these and really throw teams off guard. That they are this amoeba of a team that doesn't need to play one specific formation or one specific style per game. And he's accredited the players for buying into that. Also called this the fittest team in the league. And really, I agree with him on it, but I
yeah,
really think
they
it's a
have to be
testament to
honestly.
it, to what this season has been about. And he listed off all the fitness trainers that how in the beginning they really didn't want to buy into it, but they are probably the fittest team in the league in terms of not in terms of health and injury, but in terms of like sheer 90 minutes being able to outwork you. I think that there's an argument to be made, and especially in the South Florida heat and humidity,
Yeah,
to have as many late goals as they've had. Now, 5 games in a row with a goal after the 80th minute, I think really goes to show that. So as we look forward, as we're recording this, the midweek games have not happened yet for MLS, and there are some big ones coming up in this Eastern Conference race. On Wednesday, Charlotte will take on NYCFC in a in a twist of fate. Inter Miami fans, you're probably rooting for NYCFC the rest of the way. A lot of games with the Eastern Conference rivals will fall in the Pigeons' lap. So if they produce, that would be helpful as well. Another big one, Atlanta versus Red Bull New York, in a situation where Inter Miami, yes, they are 4 points ahead of Atlanta, but don't look now. They're also only 4 points behind Red Bulls for the fourth seed and a potential home game in the playoffs. That's how tight this Eastern Conference is. It's really remarkable. So depending on how that game goes, If you prefer the safety of the playoffs, then you're probably rooting for Red Bulls. If you're rooting for the possibility of a home field advantage, you're probably rooting for Atlanta and the opportunity that gets there. Remember, Inter Miami still does play at Red Bulls coming up in a little bit, so
Yeah.
you have the opportunity there. But the big one is obviously Toronto against New England. This is New England's game in hand. They are tied with Inter Miami on points right now. They only trail by a number of wins. Toronto 4 points back, and Inter Miami still do play them twice, both home and away. That's the weird scheduling in MLS. Everybody has two teams in their conference that they haven't played. For Inter Miami, it's Columbus and Toronto. So they have four of their last 9 games against those two clubs. So from an Inter Miami perspective, Toronto's probably the rooting interest for that game, simply because you are in control of the games against them. Even with a win, they'd still be a point behind and 1 game up on what Inter Miami has played. But a draw doesn't hurt you. It would temporarily knock you out of the playoffs. New England would jump to 34 points, and Orlando has the goal differential by a single goal. So let's focus on this Toronto New England game. And for scouting purposes, what are you necessarily looking for most in a New England team that has had a roller coaster of a season, not the same dominant team that we saw last year in the regular season, and a Toronto team that's won 3 of 4, 11 goals in that time frame, and now looking to keep that win streak going when they're going to finish this week. You got to stop them from getting 6 points this week, because that really puts you in a hole. And see what they can do tonight against the Revs team that's in a similar battle to them.
Yeah, I think with Toronto, I'll go first. I think you gotta look at their back line. Of course, their front three with Insigne, Jimenez, and Bernadeschi. Probably one of the best attacking trios in MLS. Jimenez, especially, I rate him. I think he's a good player. But yeah, their back line. I think if there's any weaknesses, it's that their center backs. If Miami can, especially in the heat, and mind you, I think Toronto will play. Not I think Toronto will play today's Wednesday. They'll play tonight. Then they have to travel to South Florida and play in that humidity. For the European guys like Insigne and Bernadeschi, who are not used to just the travel and the heat, I think that will play into Miami's advantage. And touching on them being one of the fittest teams in the league, that will be helpful for Miami just having an extra tired Toronto. Maybe their attackers won't be as crisp and sharp as they want to because of that, and that will definitely help the Herons in that regard, especially maybe if they're down a goal or if they're tied in the 89th minute. They can have Miami will have that extra step, that extra boost compared to Toronto solely because of that. I also want to mention that, yeah, I think similar to Alfredo Morales, I think if you press Michael Bradley, he's really adept at, just getting out of those, tough, spots on the field when he's pressed. But I think, you know, if you play Yamata and Gregory's just really good at, getting the ball away from his opponent. So when you have that, and Yamata, who has a really good left foot, and then you have Pozuelo, who will be extra motivated to play against his ex team at home. The fans will get behind him. Who knows? He can rise to the occasion in regards to that. So I think Miami have a lot of things going for them, similar to the last NYCFC match. I thought, you know, with Tati gone for the Pigeons and them not really being, the team that we saw earlier in the season, I thought Miami had a good chance of probably winning that. And it took a last minute goal, but they ended up getting it done. I think this Toronto match will be similar. I think, if they can nullify at least Insigne or Bernadeschi, at least one of them, and then do their business on the offensive side, I think Miami do have a chance. Like I said, Toronto traveling, the weather, I think it'll just hurt them in that regard. So, and plus the fans will probably pack out the stadium as well. So, for sure, I think Toronto, yeah, it'll be a it will be a difficult game, but they can definitely get it done. As far as them playing, uh, excuse me, New England this tonight, not this afternoon. I think it's a critical game. Obviously, I think you want, yeah, I think you want Toronto. I don't know. Does it remind me need Toronto or New England to win?
It would probably be better if Toronto wins, just simply because they would have one more game played. Inter Miami
Yeah,
plays them twice, so you really are in control of your situation and your destiny against Toronto. Like if Toronto winds up jumping Inter Miami in the end, Inter Miami did something wrong along the way. So
yeah,
it really that's the reason why. Like let's say Inter Miami gets 4 points from those two games against Toronto, they would have a massive. Uh, we're talking they would have a 4 point lead and a game in hand against Toronto, like down the stretch.
mm.
So
So yeah,
really, Toronto winning would be better, I guess, because New England is dangerous with that extra game in hand and the same amount of points. New England winning, now all of a sudden you think of New England a little closer to the Crew than you think of them like in the same regards as Orlando or Cincinnati. So it's probably best that just New England doesn't win tonight. And they do have some people out. COVID has gotten them the past couple of weeks. So and they've been having a little bit of an on and off. So yeah, Toronto would be the pick here. The question really is, well, now they're still riding high. They're still playing better and better and better, and the Italians keep playing better and better and better. So let's focus. I want to really focus on Toronto because that is the game not only for the midweek but also for Inter Miami coming up. You mentioned packing out the crowd. I'll give the plug. 2-for-1 tickets. Pack this place out.
yeah,
I mean, come on. If ever there was a time, a playoff race, a Saturday night, I think that this could be really one of the better atmospheres that Inter Miami has played in front of. And in the fact that they'll also probably need it because this is a Toronto team that is playing very well. Will like you said be tired, had travel, played midweek. This is the opportunity for Miami to go out and like lay claim to, listen, we're going to be a tough out now. We took control of the 7th seed, and if you want to get it back, we're going to be the tough out. They've been a tough out for everybody. Just ask Charlotte, just ask Cincinnati, just ask Minnesota, just ask NYCFC. They've been a tough out for a lot of teams this year, especially lately. So I think that it starts with controlling the Italians, like you had said, Insigne and Bernardeschi. They've combined to be a part of 8 of Toronto's last 10 goals. So really, all the offense runs through them right now. Tough. It's going to be a very tough game. I wouldn't be surprised to see. Going to be a tough game defensively. I wouldn't be surprised to see Yedlin be called back more, and for them to just start with the fourth back, simply because and for it to be a little more of your traditional McVay at left back, because with those guys up there, with that front three that you were talking about with Jimenez, it's really going to require all hands on deck in terms of not getting countered and just always having the numbers back just in case. I don't think that they need to be scared as much as similar times that they've been playing teams like that in the past. You look back to a situation where they played it very well. I'll give you an example: Seattle. They played it very well in that, and were able to come away with 3 points. So I think that they will be worried about those front three, but really, like you had said, I think that with Osorio you can, or with Bradley, you can really do what they did to Morales. And then it's one-on-one, whether it be Pozuelo, whether it be Duke, if he comes back in, or is in again, one-on-one against Osorio. Do I like that matchup? I think I'll take it. I would kind of call it a draw, especially if Duke is playing the way that he is. And then you want the guys up top to be able to do it. Richie Larea is really trying to get back into form since rejoining Toronto. Like you had said, that back line is suspect at times. Mavinga's an okay center back. But I think that really it starts with that like you had said, if they're going to come out with a 4-3-3, Inter Miami's used to it. Inter Miami knows what happens against that, and it's really going to be a situation where Toronto's not going to throw anything at Miami that they haven't already seen. So I think it's
Yeah.
about execution more than anything.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think Miami will be prepared for it. I don't know. I think if they play what that formation they did in the first half against NYCFC, where they were trying to counter but they had no pace, I think it won't go well. But if they play that same formation, but instead of they play like a 3-4-1-2, but Ariel Lassiter and Higuain are the two center forwards, and then you have Higuain as the number 10. Behind him are Gregory and John Mata and Taylor and Yedlin as the two wingers. I think that can work because you'll get bodies through the middle, but also pace up top. And I think that's the point where Pozuelo and Higuain will just have to track back and play some defense. But I think it could work. You could plug the middle, and then you have Lassiter in it as an in behind threat, and then maybe that can free up one of the wingbacks, either Taylor or Yedlin, to get it forward a bit more. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean it's really I think that unfortunately you have to look at this game from a defensive first mentality. You would like
Hmm.
to not in a game like this simply because I think that Inter Miami has the more talent on the field. Head to head, I think that if you did that, Inter Miami would come out on top. They are ahead of them in the standings. They are playing just as well as a hot Toronto team. The thing that scares you with Toronto is that they are capitalizing on every opportunity. If they get three goal creating actions in a game, they're scoring two or three.
Three
They
goals.
get right like
Yeah.
they are executing at a very high rate right now. That it really lends itself to not being able to have those one or two little slip ups that Inter Miami had right around May and June that cost them some points. If you do that against Toronto, they're going to pounce on it. And I really think that if you highlight we need to be organized, in the locker room, you're talking about it, you're saying we need to be organized defensively. If we find our shape there, everything will come out of that and everything will be fine because it will be easy to stop, or in theory, it should be easier if we're organized in the back. It should be easier for us to organize and clear our lines and then reset and just sort of like mechanically go about the motions with it. If all of a sudden it's who's tracking there, who we're pointing out, who's got who, then all of a sudden Inter Miami is going to have problems. So I think that organization at the back not only will blunt Toronto's attack, but it will also lead to more possession, which Miami's been doing a lot better job in the past month of. Will lead to a lot more possession, a lot more opportunity for them moving forward. One almost leads to the other in a game like this.
Yeah, and yeah, it's gonna be exciting. I think the crowd, and it's probably going to be a matchup that all the pundits and analysts are watching as well. The two Italians are there. Higuain's back in form, Pozuelo and his old team. A lot of cool narratives, a lot of interesting stories regarding that. So, um, yeah, I'm sure Phil Neville will have the boys prepared for that, and it'll be interesting to see that tactical battle between him and Bob Bradley. Um, but yeah, whatever it is, Miami need to get 3 points in this game, especially considering that their next home game won't be until the month after that. Because of the rescheduled Orlando game. So all all the points that they can pick up at during this home stretch is crucial.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth, so let's talk about it. The club making the announcement earlier this week that the September 4th matchup against Orlando City, the return home leg against Orlando City, has been moved to October 5th, I believe is the date. It's that Wednesday, that first Wednesday in October. The move being made because Orlando is playing in the U.S. Open Cup final against Sacramento Republic in that midweek. So Miami's game will be moved as that was the game before. Now, let's talk about this because I'm venturing to guess that there weren't a lot of happy people hearing this news at Drive Pink Stadium. There's not a lot that once the league makes the decision, there's not a lot that Inter Miami can do.
Yeah.
It really, you scratch your head on it because in a season where, at least in terms of the schedule makers, seemed to be as not kind to Miami as possible in drawing up their schedule. They somehow found a way to make it worse. And to do it against your own rivals and your biggest rivals in a situation where they are direct competition, what literally one's the same record and one goal difference in a playoff race. You would have hoped that all possible options would have been exhausted. They've had since late July to be able to move this game, to be finding out that now you're going to have this be the second to last game. They're going to have to play two games in a week in the last week of the season now. It's just
That'll
there
be
are
a
a
big
lot of
game though.
ways
A
where
home game against Orlando.
what? Say it again.
That'll be a big game though. Home game against Orlando, second to last game of
And
the
well, but
season.
now you're
They're going
moving it to a
to
weekday, right? And so I
yeah,
don't know. I don't
yeah,
know if
yeah,
it'll be the same crowd. So it's really
yeah,
that I'm struggling to see a way where Inter Miami would have gone. Oh yeah, okay, whatever you need.
yeah. I'm
And
sure Neville has some words for that too.
yeah,
I'm intrigued to see what he has to say.
I wish that there would have been more of an explanation. I mean, I understand why, right? Don't
Yeah,
get me wrong. I understand U.S. Open Cup final takes precedence. It is an MLS team against a non-MLS team, which
yeah.
changes
The league
everything.
doesn't. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I will
That's
point
fair.
out
That's
the
fair
last.
though.
I will point out the last Open Cup final that was in 2019, hosted by Atlanta against
Hmm.
another MLS team in Minnesota United. Atlanta, the weekend before, had to play their game. Ironically enough, where was it? At Orlando. So in that
Yeah,
situation, they didn't have to move their game. It's just saying there is precedence for moving this game in the past, because of the Cup final. I understand it. I wish that the league would have come out with we exhausted all options. We looked at different ways. We looked at different weekends or midweeks that we could have done it. This was the only way to do it. We didn't get that explanation, which I think makes it a little worse in terms of the as far as the bad blood, I guess, between the clubs or the rivalry is concerned. You feel almost like you're directly helping your rivals win a trophy and battle you for a playoff spot. It doesn't really seem like something that sleeps well at night.
yeah. At the end of the day, I think Miami will just get on with it. Really, I know it's really unfortunate because I knew I had a couple of friends that were going to go out to that game as well, and they normally don't go to soccer games, so it was going to be a pretty big deal, and I knew that crowd that was it was going to be a real big one. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but I understand it. If Miami were in that position, I'm sure that the club would want it moved as well. But and this is no slight to Orlando, but I do think the league probably wants Orlando to put out their best
Oh, obviously they're
11
not
in
going to want a
regards. They
USL
don't want
team
to.
to win
They don't
the.
want to lose to a USL team. Essentially, kudos to
It
Orlando
could
to
be
get to that
anybody in
final.
that situation.
Yeah, anyone. Literally, they don't want unless the league, not Orlando. The league doesn't want Orlando to lose to a USL side. So I see. Gosh, this is like conspiracy, but like I see why the league like it's normal. They want that. They don't want that embarrassment. They don't want that embarrassment of losing to Sacramento. There are plenty of MLS sides that tournament that lost to lower league sides, and for Orlando, they don't want them losing against Sacramento Republic. I know a lot of Inter Miami fans will be rooting for Sacramento just because of that rivalry that's there. I think it'll be an interesting game. I know Orlando in league play they haven't been the best, so if they can salvage their season, trying to get one of their
Their
first
first trophy.
you know
It'd be their
their
first
first
trophy.
trophy. I know
Yeah.
there's like preseason stuff and USL stuff, but um, yeah, I think they have every right to go for it. So yeah, I understand it's not good for Inter Miami or the fans or the people that were going to go there, but yeah, if it was Miami doing that, I think we wouldn't have any the club and the journalists wouldn't be raising their eyes in regards to that.
I'm gonna get on the fans for a sec, and it's not common for me to do because I think the fans are great. I do not think that it was a good look when it was announced that the date would be changed. all of the people not knowing why, or saying, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is nonsense," or "I'm
Oh,
not
right.
renewing my season tickets," or all that. Like
Oh, yeah.
the outrage of that. Like I'm just gonna
Yeah.
say, I'm gonna temper it. But we're in year three, and the U.S. Open Cup was a competition that Inter Miami prioritized as a club. I think that at this point it should be expected a little more, especially by some of the ones in the supporters groups, to know what's going on around the league, to stop just being in an Inter Miami bubble,
In
and to
Inter
know
Miami.
what's happening in
I
other teams and the rest of the league. I think it's about time in the maturation of the club and of the fan culture, for it to be known now. And I think that it serves everybody for that to be known. It makes the fans look knowledgeable. It makes them able to be better trash talkers, because you would have had a better
Yeah.
argument if you were able to say, "Hey, why are we directly helping our rivals?" instead of, "Why are we having to move a game? I don't know. Can you please explain?"
Or blaming Inter Miami directly, saying that they moved it for money
Correct.
reasons or whatever. No,
And
it's
I
a
will give
league
it credit. Like,
decision.
the press release did not say why. So I
Yeah.
will give them credit. Like, if you just read the headline, you would not have known just reading the headline that it was that. But I'm just saying that as we move forward in this, I think it would be great for media, for the club, for fans alike, for us to all get more knowledgeable. Let's get a little bit smarter. Let's be a little more involved in the league. Because we are stewards of this league as well. We are one of 28 as a club and as a fan group and as a media. When we interact with media from around there, and go on different shows and stuff like that. So this is a community that is a part of it, and Inter Miami has to play its part for us to just go out there and say that it's just what matters to Inter Miami and no one else. Like, you can have that Miami, no one else matters, only us, 305 till I die, all you want. I think that's great. I've lived here my whole life.
Yeah.
I subscribe to it as well. But you still do exist in a larger universe, and you have to know that other things are happening. That's all I want to say on that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the team's heading into year four, and then 10 years is going to sneak up on this club really quickly. The fans, they're super knowledgeable about world football. You got the Boca River fans, the Barca, Real Madrid fans, but they need to get knowledgeable about MLS. I'm just going to call it like I see it a lot online where they just don't understand the rules. We're heading into year four, guys. There are certain things roster wise that the team just can't do. You can't just tell tell them to walk. Like you can't just tell a player to leave the team because you personally don't like them. There are roster mechanisms in place. You have to buy out contracts. Or just certain things that they can't do. It's time that the fan base, that you guys need to learn the rules, and that's part of the reason why we're here, the Heron outlet. To make that a bit easier. And I know
That's
we
why we're
haven't
always
been
talking
doing a
about
lot of.
roster mechanisms
Yeah, it's
and
true.
budget salaries and designated players and all of that. But yeah, no, I agree with you. And our producer Andres brings up a great point. Inter Miami lost in
Yeah,
the Open Cup to Orlando on
yeah.
penalties.
It
So this
it
easily
could
could
have
have been
been
Inter
Miami.
Miami. Yeah, this
Yeah,
easily could have been an Inter
that's so
Miami
true.
situation. The last point
Hmm.
that I want to make on it is Orlando plays a home game before, and they play the Open Cup game at Exploria. So like they're home before and after that Inter Miami game. So they don't even leave the state. So like to make it like a travel
Yeah,
thing, I guess I could understand if the game was being played at Sacramento a little bit more because you have to make all that travel. But they're really just driving down the turnpike for a couple hours. I mean, they're probably not even. They're probably taking a jet. So like,
yeah,
I just
yeah.
I, yeah, we'll leave it there. But yes, the game will be Wednesday, October 5th. That will be the second to last home game. Inter Miami will close with two home games to end the year. So that September 4th game against Orlando has been moved to October 5th. You had mentioned roster mechanisms as we close up the show. The club did announce that Jairo Quinteros and the club agreed to part ways. This is, I believe, the second time we've seen this. Mo Adams earlier in the year departed
Yeah.
as well. And Quinteros now becomes a free agent, able to sign with any club. For Miami, what this does is it opens up an international roster spot. The roster freeze date is on September 22nd, with adding players mid-year. The international players of Coco and of Pozuelo those are two added. Now, Inter Miami did go out. If you remember, way back in January and February, they did trade allocation money for 2 extra international slots. So they still are in compliance with it. This makes it a little bit more easier for them to finish out the year. No worries. Everything kosher on Inter Miami's end. For Quinteros, he hadn't played since March when he got the red card and was really on the outs. Didn't seem to be in the future
Yeah, with
plans.
Sailor and Mobika
And
just
you have
showing that
Frey
they're
coming back next year.
yeah,
And
Aiden
so
Frey.
I think that it was just time for a move. Austin had said that he was hearing that Real Zaragoza and La Liga was a team of interest. I've heard that there are some clubs in South America that have shown interest that at one point or another you would have thought he was actually going to. For whatever reason, it got held up. So definitely possibilities for him and a bright young future for him. I don't think that
Oh yeah, for sure.
that anything is left. We'll follow him. We'll let you know where he goes and when he goes. But wasn't really in the future plans for Inter Miami.
Yeah, and it's okay. I think with Ryan Taylor and Mabika, you said Ian Frey is coming back next season with awful after his awful knee injury. And he's a bright young talent as well. And there are a couple of other youngsters from Inter Miami CF2, although they're a bit young. Tyler Hall, Izzy Boatwright, even though he's not a center back, he's a fullback, but just plenty of good defenders. Abel Caputo, he's transitioned more to a center back role. Yeah, I think Miami, as far as that center back position, I think they're despite people saying there's defensive trouble, I think they're set in regards to just having that depth there. Even then, I think Miami, they can go out and draft more. Worst case scenario, I think Miami's drafting record on defensive players have been pretty solid. Bar Dylan Nealis, I think. Just looking at some of their draft picks over the years, Robbie Robinson, Dylan Nealis, Robbie's still here, Dylan's gone. The next season after that was Josh Penn, Ame Mabika. Josh Penn, the attacking player, it's gone. Mabika's still here. And this
Sailor.
previous season, and excuse me,
Sailor was this past year.
Sailor, and yeah, Ryan Sailor. Yeah, I forgot. I thought he was drafted this year because of how he came through, but my fault. And then, like you said, Ryan Sailor coming through, and all these other players that are not with the first team, but they're still playing with the second team, getting on well. I think Miami just have an eye for defensive talent more so than the attacking ones. I don't know if that's going to be a continuing trend, but yeah, I think in the as far as the center back depth goes, I think yeah they with McVay there, and it was just superfluous. Yeah, best of luck to Quinteros. He's still a young Bolivian international. He'll find his footing somewhere, but it just shows that Miami do have a plan going forward next season. We'll see this roster flesh out a little bit more, and unfortunately, Quinteros was not a part of the plans.
As we close up shop here, we haven't seen the gaffer all week. Last time we spoke to Phil was Saturday night after Inter Miami's 3-2 win over New York City FC, and we haven't seen him at all this week. We won't see him again until Friday. Why is that? Well, he's back in England to get his green card this week, and left the press conference on Saturday saying that the next time that we see him, he'll be an American, and named himself President Neville as he left the press conference. I think that he kind of needs to read up on the qualifications to become resident, because you still can't get one, Phil. Sorry to break it to you. But
Yeah.
with all the green card stuff, a big congratulations to him. Always very nice to see that. The club has dealt with all the green card situations this year. And now the coach as well, with Phil Neville being able to get one. Very happy for him. Also probably for Harvey as well to be going over and completing that as well, that process as well. Great for their family and all that. But it does bring up a measure of business that let's, I guess, briefly talk about. And that is that
Yeah.
Phil's contract does expire at the end of the year. They will have to renegotiate another one. This would indicate, to some regard, that he feels as though at least America is in his future, or past this brief stint. There are mechanisms where maybe it was that he would have needed to get an extension. Instead, he just decided to get it permanent, or whatever it may be. But it does lend itself to a little bit of an understanding that maybe there are things going that Phil will have a new deal perhaps with the club past this year. Not anything that I know at this time. I don't know if you know anything that I don't. But there are indicators there that would point to things moving in a positive direction.
Yeah, and I think that's a big indicator that well, for at least next season, he will probably be the coach of Inter Miami. Like you said, they'll renegotiate, and the fact that he's not just extending his was it like a visa. He's actually getting a green card to become a citizen. So it could indicate. This is speculation. We're not reporting anything. This could indicate him maybe staying on even longer post sanctions, and maybe even moving into Miami Freedom Park. We just don't know. We don't know the future, but the fact that he is getting his green card, I think next season he will definitely be the coach of Inter Miami.
We covered the globe, right? From South America to England to Miami to
Yeah.
Toronto in Canada. We've gone a lot on this journey today, Alex Winley, and for our producer Andres and Austin Roblard. We miss you, Austin. We'll see you soon. We will also see you at Drive Pink Stadium this Saturday as Inter Miami takes on Toronto FC in a massive, massive game for playoff implications. I am Ian Hess. Make sure you follow the Heron Outlet on Twitter, on Instagram, and subscribe here on YouTube. Follow us for and wherever you get your podcasts, follow us for all the best and greatest content in Inter Miami. We'll see you back here this time next week.